Yeah, thank you. Great discussion this morning. And now we're going to continue with bringing in some additional voices that we've had in the room on our first panel discussion. And this one, which will go for the next hour until our break, is on advancing excellence and innovation in the olive oil industry. And for this panel, we have two olive oil producers who will be joining us via Zoom. And there we are. We see them both. Greetings to you, Rosa and Leandro. Leandro's joining us from Australia and Rosa from Spain. And then we have three panelists who are from academic institutions, and then one panelist from a governmental regulatory organization in a class by itself, the International Olive Council. And so what we're going to do here is I came in prepared with some questions, but we also want to hear from folks in the room. So we'll have time for questions from our attendees here. And we'll start with some introductions. Very briefly, the program has some biographical material about many of the panelists. And so that for this first section, we'll just take a minute or two to talk about who you are, what your organization does, and the importance that you place upon quality and excellence in the olive oil industry as a path to the future. So why don't I start there, and then I'll call on each one to just do this brief introduction. My name is Dan Flynn. I have served as the executive director of the UC Davis Olive Center for 14 years as the founder, and then retired last year from the position. And what the Olive Center has done is been a collaborative organization where we brought together the resources, UC Davis, which is recognized as the top university in agriculture in the United States, to apply their resources to this crop of olives, whether it be the growing of olives or the processing into table olives, olive oil, or other types of products as we've discussed. And then in addition to that, we've been collaborative with other organizations outside the university, which include the olive oil industry in California primarily, but also beyond, as well as universities beyond California, the UC Davis. And in terms of the importance that we've placed upon quality, I mean, that was one of the main functions of what we tried to do through the research and education services that we provided, which was to lift the quality and productivity as well of for the olive growers and processors. And a couple of just things that I could point out in that regard, for example, would be the standards for California olive oil that we discussed yesterday, which California did to try to differentiate their product from other products outside of California, and to promote best practices in the growing and processing of olive oil and table olives. And we really had an impact over that period, and the Olive Center has continued on with my successor in the position, who I'll then ask next to introduce himself, Javier Fernandez Salvador.
Thank you, Dan. My name is Javier Fernandez Salvador. I'm the current executive director of the Olive Center, and very humbled to follow Dan, as he has a great career expanding many years in the California industry. And we're going through a big restructuring at the Olive Center, and my background is agronomic, as well as my master's and PhD in horticultural production of tree fruits. And one of the main aspects that we want to support in the future is increasing agronomic factors that could promote yield increases and productivity for growers, as well as support the sustainability initiatives that could help us differentiate the Californian crop. And of course, rebuild, continue to grow and expand our collaborations with other universities, entities, and groups around the world. Thank you.
Okay, and next I'd like to call on Jaime Leo from the International Olive Council.
Thank you very much, Dan. Well, the International Olive, well, I'm Deputy Executive Director of the International Olive Council, which is an intergovernmental organization. It means our members are countries that are ratifying an international agreement in their parliaments and deposited in the United Nations. And this organization was created 60 years ago under auspices of United Nations. And today we count with 44 countries, producing around 96% of olive oil in the world, who are supporting us with their public budget to carry out mainly three areas of activities which are in our international treaty. One of our main activities is to work on the standards and to promote quality in the product. That is to provide a common language to hopefully all the stakeholders in the world to define what is the categories of olive oil, what is an extra virgin olive oil, what is not an extra virgin olive oil, what are the parameters to be analyzed, what are the methods to be used, which are the laboratories who has the competence to analyze those methods. This is typically one of our main activities. We also promote quality through our international quality award competition, very much recognized within the sector with the Mario Solinas Award. We do on olive oil and health. We are having a collaboration with the University of Navarra and Professor Miguel Gonzalez to have a website which update together what we know based on science and publications on health and olive oil, which we call the Olive Health Information System. We also do technical cooperation and with our members and other countries to promote best practices and cultivation at all the levels, growing and extraction and marketing. We have some grants for main research centers, trainings, and we also do big work on the genetic source to maintain and use to give response to major challenges like climate change or sea level or other threats for the sector. We have a network of germplasm and banks and international collections coordinating. We work on the environmental issues. We produce global statistics for all stakeholders and do some promotional activities. That's really the main activities we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, and in a moment, Jaime will share some slides about give us a perspective on the overview of the industry. But before we get to that, I'd like to call on Eleni to introduce herself.
Thank you. I am Eleni Meliou, and I am the president of the World Olive Center for Health. And in parallel, I work as a researcher in the School of Pharmacy in the University of Athens. The World Olive Center for Health is a non-profit organization aiming to support and coordinate the research related to olive oil and health, and also to offer certification of the olive oil quality related with the European health claim in collaboration with the University of Athens. Our organization was established 6 years ago, and it has about 1,000 members from 10 countries. The organization is based in Athens, but it has an international board. 10 years ago, I was a visiting scholar at UC Davis Food Science Department, and there I was inspired by the UC Davis Olive Center. And when I returned back to Greece, I had the idea to create an international non-profit organization dedicated only to study of the health benefits of olive oil and olive products in general. My scientific background is a food scientist, chemist, and a PhD with a PhD in pharmacognosy, which means that during my research in the university, I study the pharmaceutical properties of natural products and especially the compounds found in foods. I have been doing research on olive products for almost 20 years, and I believe that the phenolic compounds of olive oil are some of the most important ingredients of the whole Mediterranean diet.
Thank you, Eleni. And now, Imen, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself next.
Yes, thank you, Dan. I would like first to thank the IOC for suggesting me as the Tunisian panelist in this prestigious event. Thank you, Greg, and all the organizational team for this great event. I'm Imen Trablsi Triki. I'm full professor in marketing at University of Sfax, Tunisia. I prepared my PhD in University of Auvergne, France. I have a dual role. I'm specializing in agri-food, quality and marketing. I'm also the executive vice president of Women in Olive Oil International Organization, created 2 years ago and involving more than 50 countries and more than 2,000 women involved in olive oil value chain. We are researchers, experts, nutritionists, farmers. I'm also certified in the sensory tasting of olive oil. I'm a jury in many international competitions. So I believe in making the bridge between university and the professional world, since we should benefit from each other. We should valorize our scientific research. And for the companies, this technological transfer is very important. So we have, I'm supervising many PhD theses dealing with olive oil marketing, digital marketing, social networks. And I was involved in many international projects, scientific projects dealing with promoting olive oil exports, especially for Tunisian exports. As we all know, Tunisia is the second or among the best and the greatest producer of high quality olive oil, but the majority of olive oils are exported in bulk. So our objective is to raise awareness about exporting branded olive oil to add great value to our economy. And thank you.
So, Rosa, we're going to ask you if you can hear us okay, and if you're ready to introduce yourself. Okay, great.
So hello to everybody, and very, very sad to be not in Rome with you. Sadly, on Sunday afternoon, I came to know that I had COVID and I had to stay in Spain. But nevertheless, I would like to say hello to all friends that are there, and very sad that I'm not being able to be with you. But anyway, I hope that we can be together very soon. Let me introduce myself. I'm a very proud Spanish and Andalusian producer. I've been producing extra virgin olive oil since 1780. On the last 20 years, doing high quality, early harvest extra virgin olive oil. We belong to these 30% of Andalusian olive trees certified by integrated agriculture or biodynamic or organic. So these are good news. It's 30% of these agricultures are certified, and we export to 50 countries around the world. My life is to be all the time traveling, presenting high quality extra virgin olive oil, trying to convince people, consumer, chefs, multiples and all kind of consumers that extra virgin olive oil is the future and is a reality, because it's outstanding on the gastronomic standpoint. It's extremely healthy. It's a fresh fruit use, and at the same time, we are extremely sustainable. I like Javier talking about something that it addressed to me many times when I'm presenting my oils. When people are asking me about water, about carbon footprint, about my agronomic practices, quality is an holistic view. It's 360% of what you're doing with your trees, with your olive oil, with your lands, how you're presenting everything. It's a really talking about quality. Everything communicates. So yes, it's true that when you talk about water, to be certified with water footprint and to be taken care of the future of the planet is giving value added to the extra virgin olive oil that we are selling.
Thank you very much, Rosa. Thank you for joining us. I don't know if people caught it here, but she came down with COVID a couple of days ago, and she's protecting all of us by staying away. And now, she didn't mention it, but her olive oil is often cited as one of the best in the world. So if you haven't tried Castillo de Canena, please try it sometime. And then we have Leandro Ravetti from Australia in the middle of harvest down there. Also a really well-regarded producer, Crowborough Estate. Leandro, welcome.
Hi, Dan. Thank you. I hope that you can hear me okay. Good morning, everybody. Good evening for me here in Australia. Thank you very much for inviting us to be part of this meeting. As Dan said, my name is Leandro Ravetti, and I'm the co-CEO of Cobram Estate Olives. I apologize for not being able to be there in person, but I'm sure you understand, as I believe that I'm actually the only person in this meeting actually producing olive oil at the moment. Very briefly, the company is Australia's largest producer and marketer of extra virgin olive oil, with over 7,000 hectares of, or about 3 million trees of highly productive olive groves in Australia, and more recently in the USA. We are probably and arguably one of the world's largest fully vertically integrated extra virgin olive oil companies. And to your point, Dan, we have always placed quality and excellence as a #1 priority, and probably as an example and to better support that claim. I always say that we are proud of having achieved something that is quite unique in the world's olive industry. We built Cobram Estate as a brand from zero to become the #1 brand in a large market like Australia, despite being the most expensive product in the supermarket shelves. It certainly has been the most awarded oil on those shelves, but through proper education, it was clear that consumers understood the value proposition and supported us in this vision that, which is certainly your vision, that a healthier and tastier and higher quality olive oil at the end of the day is a better value for them.
Well, thank you, and thanks for joining us during this busy period down there. So why don't we get into our questions? And we heard a lot over the last day and a half. A lot of evidence was presented about the health, producing, and protective properties of the carefully produced extra virgin olive oils. And what are the opportunities for this sector of the industry of seeking higher quality and excellence as you see it? Where are the opportunities for this as you look at the industry going forward? So maybe to start us off, before we get to that, I want Jaime, before we get to that question, maybe you can just present your slides just to give us a perspective over the industry, some statistics that are looking at the big picture globally.
Thank you, Dan. Maybe I can. So yeah, the intention is give a little bit of context with global statistics. Well, this is the picture of the headquarters of the International Olive Council, which is based in Spain, but I had already the opportunity to present the organization. So we go straight to what we are looking when we look to the global figures and where we are coming, and have a look also where can we go. In the last 25 years, the olive oil production has more or less doubled in the world, from 1.5 million tons around. We are around 3 million tons produced every year. This is the clear green line, and you can see in the last years these peaks, ups and downs. So we are growing, but for some experts, we are already observing climate change effects in severe droughts, not that cold winters, new disease coming like Xylella, and we are observing these big ups and downs in the production, which is one of the challenges for the whole sector, because it's affecting, of course, prices and so on. Not maybe for the very excellent extra virgin, but for the whole sector. But the good news of this graphic is the red line, which is the consumption in the world, because in big producing countries as Spain, there was a big concern. What are we going to do when we reach the ceiling of 2 million tons on production? And what we are observing is that the olive oil is consumed as it's better known. And I would like to now look at the consumption, what's happening with the consumption, because the consumption is growing, but it's moving out of the Mediterranean region. So the consumption in the Mediterranean region, particularly in the EU countries as Italy, Spain, or Greece, has been phasing down and now is more or less stable, but it's because it's growing in other countries out far away from the Mediterranean basin. And as a consequence, trade is growing. That's why international legislations, standards, and we are at a moment of a real globalization of the product. When we see the previous speakers, like excellent producers, they all are selling their product in 50 countries or even more. That's what we are learning. We are at a very we've seen imports growing from around 200,000 tons to more than 1,200,000 tons in 20 years. And this is a big effort done by the sector, which comes with also, of course, with new challenges. And where is the olive oil going? We have US as a big player coming, and is absorbing 1/3 of imports in the world because consumption has been growing, and it has still a lot of potential of growth. As we know, it's about 1 kilo per person in the US average of consumption of olive oil, while in Mediterranean countries is around 10 kilos per person. So there's still a margin to improve with many other connotations, but I think this is very much linked with the discussion we were having about, the Mediterranean diet is a kind of inspiration, but is also to be adapted to other parts of the world, because the olive oil has to be integrated with other vegetables and other traditions, and this is the plan for our kitchen approach, and is been related to many of the discussions. Is the US, is Brazil, is Japan, is Canada, and China. I want to say that China is growing fast, coming from no use of olive oil, and they are awakening the interest in the olive oil, and that could create you can imagine the capacity of consumption that there is there. So there is just this is lies on the US market. I wanted to bring the attention in the last 4 years, because this is something also for the discussion. What we are seeing is within the last 4 years, the consumption growing significantly over the world, in particular in the US, Europe, and everywhere. It's very much related with the pandemic, with people cooking at home, taking the time to eat, people caring about health and about environment. And this is something to reflect, because we believe we are in such a momentum. We have to analyze what is happening to understand that this is not a conjunctural thing that we will forget in a couple of years, but maybe to understand what is going on, to see a new path of growing on consumption over the world based on those learning. And this is already reflecting. This is typically what we do every year. We produce the annual production and what stocks and blah, blah. But what we never seen before is 3 years in a row consumption over 3 million tons and consumption over the production capacity for 3 campaigns in a row. This is something that never happened before, and it's not because, and also not necessarily in a low prices circumstances that we've seen other. So many things to reflect, and this is my last slide that I took from a presentation of Cargill. Cargill is one of the main retailers of food in the world. We were discussing major trends of consumer in the future, and they put this slide as the main macro trends what is in the brain of consumers more and more. Of course, they take apart the price, which is not a trend, it's a permanent thing. But if we isolate the price thing, is health in more and more growing, and we're learning, and maybe the challenge is how to communicate, how to educate, but it is definitely in the olive oil. It's environment side, as Maria was saying, and we know it's there. We know it's a resilient plant, using in poor soils with little use of water. You can have a lot of good calories and product, and it's also serving us for biodiversity, for maintain the soil. And this has to be better explained and developed, because it's one of the major trends that people is asking for this when they're going to have food. It's also the experience. And this is also to have taste, to have a relation with an origin, with a story. They can taste, they can smell the product, they can use for cooking, and it has to be simple. And using olive oil could be pretty simple and accessible for everybody. So when we look at those major trends, we see a promising future. But of course, the question is how to make it happen, and we have excellent panelists to talk about it. So thank you, Dan, for letting me give this short introduction.
That will provide, good context for not only this panel, but I think the next panel, which is looking at the consumer and its knowledge level. And so why don't we get to this first question then, and I think I'll call on Rosa first. Getting back to the first question, which is, we've heard a lot about the health protecting properties of olive oil that is well made. And this is a sector of the industry that's just a small but probably growing sector on seeking higher and higher quality. So what do you see for this piece of the industry as we move forward as part of its future, the high quality, excellent olive oil?
Well, I totally agree with Jaime on our experience that we are all the time traveling around the world presenting high quality extra virgin olive oil, trying to support and educate consumer and chefs and customers. And more, what we're seeing that people are more open and they're willing and able to consume, to buy, and to use on daily basis at home and outside. What I think is that we need some time. We need some time because it's really, we're changing category that was, 15 years ago, it was an ingredient. We were not thinking about gastronomic experience. We were not thinking about, the healthy part of extra virgin olive oil. We were not thinking on the sustainable tree that it's really the olive tree. And we were just thinking of an ingredient, or just the Mediterranean countries. We gave a little bit of more focus to extra virgin olive oil. Now Jaime was talking about the United States. Really, it's booming. You can see that the consumer is really open to extra virgin olive oil. Japan, even Middle East, Germany, United Kingdom. I mean, we are seeing, the category is changing. The consumer, the more they learn, the more conscious they are about health, and they would like to take care of themselves. The more related to gastronomy and incredible good ingredients, the more the category of extra virgin olive oil, the quality, the excellence of extra virgin olive oil will be there. We need time. We need a focus on expanding this message, giving people knowledge and experience. But there is a future, and there's no way of stopping this category of high quality extra virgin olive oil leading, the oils of the world, under my point of view.
Thank you, Rosa. And Leandro, if you can hear us, what's your take on this as a large producer of olive oil?
Yes, Dan, certainly I agree. I strongly agree with Rosa. When I moved from Argentina to Australia more than 21 years ago, actually, I left the position that I had as a researcher because I really share the view of the founders of the company that there was an opportunity to bring high quality olive oil to the masses, in a sense. if we go back to the 80s or the 90s, the reality is that accessing high quality, healthy extra virgin olive oil was not easy, and certainly not cheap at all. The situation has obviously changed a lot over the past 2 decades in particular, obviously not just by us, but also the work of so many others, like Castillo de Canena, for example, which is really a great way of educating that large amount of consumers. But I feel that there's still, like Rosa, that there's still plenty more to be done, and a world of consumers out there that have not yet experienced the joy of a freshly squeezed, high quality extra virgin olive oil, because once they do, there's no way back.
Jaime, did you have a perspective on this? Having looked at the global perspective on the industry, where do you see this element of quality in terms of the industry's future?
Well, as it was said, in my personal opinion, from the point of view we are looking at absolutely revolution in the quality of olive oils in the last 15 years, I would say. We have some of the main characters, protagonistas, I would say, the main people make it happening. You can see them in the screen and in the room. What is happening there is with their early harvest practices and treating the product properly from the moment of the tree to the bottle. The improvement is amazing. There are some, and I think the challenges is to pass this effort to the value of the product and to extend in not only in the very high top producers, but in the whole chain. This is, and we see this is happening. This is happening. The question is how to make it, how to provide good olive oils at an affordable price, because not everybody can afford the super top quality. And how can we provide good quality olive oil for a big consumption over the world? And this is, we see that clearly the reality is going faster than regulations and sometimes even research, that we are trying to put the figures and explanations to things that we are observing that is already there.
Great. Well, it sounds like with this question, there's optimism about the growth of quality, not only at the very highest levels, but all through the olive oil sector. So that's good news for the health of the consumer and hopefully for the profitability of the producer. So getting to our next question, I think I'd like to bring in our researchers, the folks that came in from universities, about the future role of research and innovation in improving quality in the sector. And Javier, do you want to take on this one?
Thank you, Dan. I think one of the main issues that we continue to see is getting funding for the size of projects that we need in the oil industry, especially with the cost of production that we have at the university. I think that's one of the very important challenges that we continue to see, and it's something that we need to start to address at the as an industry. One, because the industry, at least in California, continues to collaborate and continues to fund projects, but we are lagging behind to the level that what we would like to see for these larger studies, for example, considering environmental impact and evaluating the practices and how that impact could be applied for the producers to be able to commercialize their products better. Those kinds of studies are very time-consuming and require large amounts of funds. And this is where our industry, on top of coming together, needs to get substantial support from other sectors, including federal funding, of course, in the case of the United States, but world funding, so that we can continue to address those challenges.
Yeah, as we were talking about yesterday, looking at olive oil compared to other oil-bearing crops and how they compare on an environmental basis. That is definitely an area that needs some funding, and the industry is looking for it. Eleni, would you like to take this question?
I think research and innovation has a very important role in several directions. A first example is that research can help the producer to improve the quality, especially in relation with the phenolic compounds and the health claim of olive oil. In the recent years, the research has given answers regarding the factors affecting the phenolic content of olive oil. Variety, harvest period, procedure in the olive mill, malaxation time and temperature, role of the type of the olive mill, the role of irrigation, and the pedoclimatic conditions. During a European project, the Restore project, we monitor 3,000 producers from 5 countries, Greece, Italy, Spain, Croatia, and Cyprus, for 3 years period. We analyzed 7,000 samples, and we concluded with a guide for producers. The outcome is that all varieties in all countries under appropriate conditions can meet the standards of the European health claim, which is very encouraging. We have hundreds of examples of producers that followed the instructions, and they achieved to increase the quality and finally the price of their product. The second example of contribution of the research is that it has offered new methods to certify the quality. More specifically, during the Restore project, we developed 2 methods, NMR and LCMS, that have been validated in 3 universities, Athens, Cordoba, and Split, to measure the phenolic compounds and certify the EU health claim. With the new methods, we are now able to measure very quickly and directly and efficiently all the phenolic compounds one by one and not as a total. We have certified several thousand of olive oil samples in the last years, and we are very satisfied that many consumers are already looking for this type of certification. This is very important, not only for the producer and the customers, but also for the performance of targeted clinical trials. When we perform a clinical trial, it is very important to know which exactly compounds are contained in the olive oil we study, because each compound has very different activities. Besides the already established EU health claim for olive oil, in the Mediterranean we know by traditional experience that olive oil is very important for the prevention of several other diseases and especially for healthy aging. But we need robust data and proofs for the peoples that are not used to consume olive oil. For this purpose, we are continuously organizing and performing new experimental or clinical trials for several diseases, aiming to collect new data to support new health claims for olive oil, and finally to increase its economic value.
In those clinical trials, definitely it's helpful to get the additional data to substantiate health claims, and of course these trials are expensive and require funding, but definitely a lot of folks here in the room have been adept at getting that funding for the incredible research that's been done on the Mediterranean diet. One of the things that struck me about your answer, Eleni, was that it's not just research that is going to be impactful, but it's also education of the producer on what we already know in terms of quality. And Imen, on this issue, I know that you've had we talked yesterday, you've had some experience in Tunisia with this.
Yes, absolutely. From the side of production, as from my own professional experience, I believe that producers should always be educated to adopt best practices in each stage of the olive oil value chain, from the olive tree to from the olive grove to the whole extraction olive oil. As we all know, the olive oil is pure juice of fruit, so we should care about the olive tree in every stage of fertilization, irrigation, pruning practices, etc. And for managing a good process of irrigation, as we all know, nowadays technological advances can optimize both the time and the amount of water thanks to artificial intelligence, IoT. So our added value as experts and as researchers is to raise awareness about using these technological advances. Also for traceability, as we all know, traceability is an essential element allowing to regain confidence among consumers, and blockchain technology can respond to this need. As we all know, blockchain aims to track the food through all the stages, from production to processing and distribution. And the blockchain is a good way to enhance traceability and to enhance the integrity of credence claims, such as sustainability source claims, organic, fair-based claims like kosher, halal claims, etc., since the authoritative source of this claim are integrated into the blockchain. So I believe that both technological advances should be integrated, and producers should adopt these best practices in order to manage both features, how to adopt best practices to enhance quality, how to optimize both quality and quantity, and also how to manage sustainability, best practices for good sustainable olive oil. We also have many projects to raise awareness how to valorize derivatives, byproducts, waste of olive trees. I think these good practices are very important nowadays because as a producer, they should manage their costs, optimize their production, and enhance their quality by adopting many best practices from the whole olive oil value chain.
There you go. And we were talking also yesterday about how the work that you were doing has really helped in Tunisia for them to start lifting the quality in throughout the industry there. And Tunisia, has some special challenges in that most of the orchards are dry farmed, and so production can be quite erratic from year to year depending on the amount of rainfall. So thank you very much for that answer. And then I'd like to just ask one more before we ask others in the room here for their questions. And it relates to profitability. And so as we've heard, it can impact your yield when you're focusing on quality. And ultimately, it's important to the growers out there and the processors that this be a profitable enterprise for them to continue to expand the industry and continue to lift the quality. So here's the question, and I think I'll throw it to our producers joining us from Zoom, is how can the economics of the sector be strengthened so that we can increase profitability across the olive oil value chain? Leandro, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, look, happy Dan to do it. I think that there's clearly two main factors that can help to strengthen the profitability of the olive oil value chain. One, not necessarily possible at all times, but definitely are the yields. A large amount of the primary production costs for the industry are rather fixed. So obviously increasing the amount of oil that is produced per hectare can significantly reduce the production cost per liter or per gallon. We're talking about the US. And just to give you and give probably some of the people in the room an idea of the scale that we're talking about here, our average production for a mature modern growth is about 30,000 liters of extra virgin olive oil per hectare, which is 10 times more oil per hectare than the world's industry average. So we're not talking about a small difference, we're talking about a potential huge difference for the industry to grow in terms of yield. And the second, and not always those higher yields necessarily go against quality. It really comes down to the technology, the variety, and how it gets obtained. But the second factor, it has been discussed already, that is the price of the oil. As we've been discussing, obviously, we are firm believers of good value for money proposition. And if the oil is of high quality, the consumer will get a better deal and be happy to pay a little bit more money. For many years, until those last 20 years that we're talking about, the industry has been almost a race to the bottom. The cheaper that the oil was going to sell more. If it wasn't selling on heavy discount, it wasn't selling. I think that high quality producers have also reverted that trend with education and managed to achieve a price for the oil that it not necessarily is extremely high, but it's just high enough to make the production sustainable and also to drive further investments in the sector. Because as Jaime have shown, production somehow stalls, over the past, 5, 6, 7 years. And clearly to keep supporting growth in the consumption, we need to keep supporting investment. And if it doesn't make sense economically, it just will not happen.
Yes, increasing yield is one of the key things that you mentioned there. And it seems that from a sustainability standpoint, that would be a good thing if you can plant less land and get more oil out of a parcel. That would be better also for the environment, as long as you're using the resources sparingly. Rosa, would you like to take this question as well on profitability?
Yes, thank you, Dan. Well, I think that we have to work with what we got right now, and especially talking about Spain or talking about Jaén, where I come from, we have 66 million olive trees planted. So there is no way of thinking that we are going to change the cultivars, but what we have to think is how to make more value perception by consumer. And the way we think, I think that we are doing, it's investing on this communication of what's on a high quality extra virgin olive oil or early harvest extra virgin olive oil. And the more consumer knows about this experience, the more they're willing and able to pay on a sustainable basis. The worst or the most difficult way of achieving a consumer is not the first time, it's the second one. When they pay for your product, they use your product and they would like to be continuing using your product. So there are two main things. So we have to invest a lot of effort on communicating all these value added on the gastronomic and on all the healthy and on the sustainable part. And also we need to be able, and this is something that I know it's not easy. The more we are allowed to tell consumer about the value added of the healthier part in our label, the more we are going to achieve these doubts that sometimes the consumer has. Nowadays, we can say nothing on our labels. And so we are all the same. We are extra virgin olive oil, but we cannot claim any healthy, any value added on that side. We are the only fresh fruit squeeze on a juice in a bottle. And the more the values a consumer perceive, the more they're willing and able to pay. So there's a lot of way to communicate. And from our side, for instance, these sustainable measurement, like having grass in our lands that people think that are going to be not a value added. It's proven to be, very, very sustainable, but also very wealthy kind of investment, because we're having more water, we are having no erosion, we're having a lot of value added with the water that it's really unknown. So there is a part of telling people about what to do how to make good practices, how to manage the business, how to present the extra virgin olive oil, how to take care of the lands. There's a lot of things to communicate, not only to consumer, but to other producers.
Well, thank you, Rosa. So why don't we pause here on my questions and open it up to anyone in the room. Tassos?
Yes, Dan, thank you. One question, Jaime showed that slide with projections of deficit in terms of the demand not being met by the supply. So, I mean, I'm not a behavioral scientist, but I think from a consumer perspective, we're building up to this idea of consume more olive oil. All of a sudden, we cannot deliver. Your projections are correct. Projections are projections, plus or minus. But how confident is the industry that it's going to meet that expectation of the demand, and in the context of climate change too?
Well, we haven't yet arrived to the point of not meeting the demand, because it's true that because we can with what we call stock between two campaigns. So there is enough olive oil to meet the demand, the consumption. What is happening, and we have now like a perfect storm with the crisis with the war, which is, as we know, taking not olive oil but other, well, in particular sunflower, no, aceite de girasol, sunflower olive oil has been taken out of the market. So there is and on top of that, there was an increase in the olive oil by itself. And then we are again in this situation where we still have facing droughts. And so at the end, what we'll see is the prices are very unstable and very high at the beginning of the season, and this is affecting the whole chain. But in my view, there is production capacity and we are looking at new projects, huge projects in Arabia Saudi, in Australia, in Argentina, in Spain, in Portugal, in Egypt. So that we see the production capacity growing, and people is investing in particular in new plantations where are having bigger yields, and this is facing another challenge of traditional orchards, where we need to put in value the other values with high productive, which also very good quality productions. So all of these challenges is part of the equation, but we don't see scarcity of oils for the moment. But of course, the price is affecting the price rising because of these circumstances is affecting the speed of the growth of the consumption, because of course with high prices consumption is not growing, or we can see some years falling down, but we expect the tendency to keep on growing.
Joe?
Yeah.
Thank you. Rosa and Leandro, hello, and welcome. I do want to get back to the question you addressed regarding the economics, because I think it's an interesting idea or concern that where we have the traditional groves or more traditional groves versus the high-intensive groves, where, as Rosa said, yes, we want to focus on the value added for the early harvest oils, the high phenolic, the great flavors. But I'm wondering, is there an opportunity in those more traditional groves to do a secondary harvest where the oil that's produced may be of a lower quality, but still a good oil, good for cooking, even possibly lampante that gets refined?
So Rosa, Leandro, would you like to take on that?
Sure. I totally agree. I think that there is an opportunity for not early harvest, and we're fighting for that around the world. We think that there is market for both of them, and once we're pushing for extra virgin olive oil consumption, if we can really put all the value added of early harvest, like we're doing quality can be done on early harvest, and quality can be done on not so early harvest. Sustainability, the way you're producing could be on early harvest and also in not early harvest. Traceability could be on both of them. So we need to push on both markets and on both opportunities. Even you were talking before about bitterness. Sometimes the early harvest is not so consumer friendly. It's not so easy. So we need really to push the whole category. There's no way of just focusing on the high quality early harvest, very special. I think that from our perspective as producers, we are definitely pushing on both of them, and this is the future.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. And Rafi, did you have a question? No, it's okay? Okay. Javier.
I just wanted to add something to that. In California, we experienced something very interesting with these, because when we talk about super high density, the profit, I think we can clearly expand out acreage a lot more than what is happening currently. And the reason why we're not doing that is because we're competing with crops that other tree fruit crops that are far more profitable at this point. For example, almonds, pistachios, right? And the reason why, when this is going to change, is when water gets more limited, because then olives have an upper hand, definitely, compared to, especially with the California regulations that will continue to get harder in the future. So that happens in the super high density market. Now, in the medium or traditional production, where they're still harvesting by hand sometimes, and or with assisted harvesters, then the question changes. It's much different. They're trying to focus on getting that fruit earlier, producing that more high quality product. But to what Joe mentioned, there's a few growers that are looking for a more economically viable model where they still produce that high quality product at the beginning of the season, but then leave some fruit in the tree that can be mechanically harvested, shaken, and then produce, I wouldn't call it really a lower quality product, just a different product that it's more of an entry level, not necessarily a connoisseur for the California market. So there's opportunities in all of these areas.
Okay, thank you, Javier. And why don't we talk about the consumer for a second? I know the next panel is going to be focused on that more, but there's all these myths that surround food, and olive oil is one of them. And for example, we hear all the time that you can't cook with olive oil. And so what are some of the things that we can do? What are maybe one or two priorities that we could do to have a better educated consumer? As Rosa pointed out, it's really critical for the profitability of the producer. Is the more that the consumer knows, the more they're willing to pay. So Imen, would you like to take on this one?
Yes, thank you, Dan. First of all, maybe I would like to talk about the changes in consumer behavior nowadays, especially during the COVID-19 period. This period has changed the way people think about purchase and plan and consume their food. The silver lining during this pandemic has been the rise of various positive trends around the sustainability and health. The industry has a real opportunity to innovate to meet consumer needs. For instance, through new experiences for consumers to enjoy food at home, or tailoring their online experience to new ways of shopping. Extra virgin olive oil could substantially satisfy consumer needs for more sustainable healthy and traceable food products consumption. As we all know, marketing is the science and the art of exploring, creating, and delivering needs and desires to satisfy the needs of a target market at profit. Marketing aims to identify and to fulfill consumer needs. It defines, measures, and quantifies the size of the identified market and the profit potential. Unfortunately, from this definition, we can highlight 3 features of marketing. Market studies linked to market research, customer prospection, monitoring of competitive positions through panels, consumer surveys, control of the effectiveness of marketing action. Then the second feature is strategy marketing, linked to choice of market segments or targets, determination of the positioning and policy of the brand, and customer relationship management. And the third one is the operational market, as we know, the 4 Ps: product, place, promotion, and price. Unfortunately, most of producers today pay more attention to the last feature linked to operational marketing and neglect the 2 first features related to market studies and strategic marketing, which constitute the most important component of the whole marketing strategy. So as experts, we should raise awareness for producers to enhance their strategy, to have a clear vision from the beginning, and to study the markets, and to decide what will be their target. Is the niche market or mass production, the mass market, and depending on the varieties they will choose, and the way they will make their plantation strategy super intensive, or traditional olive groves. So this is just a comment about the problem of understanding the mean and the advantages of marketing, because we should pay attention about the 3 components of marketing, from the market study to strategic marketing, and finally to the operational marketing. For consumers, yes, we have great work to promote and to educate consumers. As we all know, consumers don't know what is extra virgin olive oil, what are the different categories of olive oil. And we have recently submitted and made a paper with some colleagues from Greece and from Aarhus University from Denmark. We have made a cross-cultural study on consumer preferences towards olive oil, and we found that the price constitutes the first factor on which consumers base their choice. And then when we have analyzed the characteristics of the profile of these consumers, we have found that these consumers don't have any knowledge about the type of olive oil, and don't understand what is the difference between the different categories: extra virgin olive oil, pomace olive oil, etc., refined olive oil. So this is a great opportunity today for managers and for all the producers, and for us also to make a great efforts to educate consumers about the different categories of olive oil. What are the advantages? How can you use olive oil's different varieties for food pairing? In Tunisia, for example, we have 2 major cultivars. We have Chetwi and Chimlali. Chetwi is more intense fruity olive oil, and some research, scientific studies have proved that this cultivar is very high polyphenolic content, and with pronounced bitterness and pungency. Of course, all these criteria are balanced, and Chimlali is more sweet olive oil. So I think consumers should know how to make their food pairing, how to cook with the adequate olive oils. It's very important. And for consumers today, the consumers want to understand where their food comes from, how it is produced. So any story around those elements can impact consumer trust and product sales.
Out of time here, but thank you for that discussion of the consumer. And it sounds to me that the more the consumer knows about where the oil is coming from and its special qualities, the better success that the producer can have. And I want to thank all the panelists for joining us for this discussion. It sounds to me that, you know, as Jaime pointed out, production is growing. It's particularly growing outside the traditional producing nations, which bodes well for the future. And the more that we can educate the consumer, the better it will be for their health as well as for the health of the industry and producer profits. So at this time, we're going to take a break. And in our next panel, we'll talk more about the consumer and their education. I want to thank everyone for joining us on this panel.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.